I do hope you can see me today from where you are.
Ich bin ein Willi.
If I'm generally anything, I guess I'm generally miserable. This modern world of science and invention is of particular interest to women.
The people, I would say, there is no patent. Would you patent the sun?
I regard myself as a soldier, though a soldier of peace.
Welcome to the Biographers.
Because there's just so much more history that I know about.
I never think about the Roman Empire.
I never do.
It's not a thing.
Because it's
me.
like, with most dudes who aren't history nerds, the Roman Empire is all the history that they know, and then they expand out from there. But since I'm already a history nerd, I'm going all over the place, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. For me, it's just one of those that, like, I know the Romans were significant. I know many of the emperors were significant. I just have no, like, it doesn't do much for me anymore, if that makes any sense. Like when I was younger, the whole just like conquest and violence, like that was fun. And now it's just sort of like, I don't know, fucking Romans. Like,
yeah,
in many ways, they ruined a lot of things.
We kind of talked about that in the first series. That's why I picked Marcus Aurelius. I also, they ruined a lot of things. We're going to get into some of that, and
just
it's very interesting. Yes, Romans ruined a lot of things, but also how Rome developed in later history.
Okay.
I'm not pointing any names, but it rhymes with the Schmatikin. That is, I would say, more of the impetus for the ruinings, right? Like there was a much more, not to say that these people were, we talked about this with Chinese history, not to say that these people were enlightened in any way, right? But there was a variety of color to the history that sort of gets dampened out as time goes on. And, you know, the Catholic Church kind of gets their whole thing going.
Oh, the Catholics. Yeah, no,
But did you hear that you can now, for religious reasons, not use AI at work because the Pope just condemned it? So for the Catholics out there who don't want to have your jobs replaced by some LLM, you can now tell your boss that. Apparently that's holding up at some HRs somewhere.
I was going to say, for all Catholics out there, if you want to, you know, keep in the good graces of the big guy upstairs, better not use the AI, according to the Pope.
Yeah, don't go against him.
The Pope.
Or the White Sox.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to the Biographers. I'm Daniel Newman, hanging out with Charlotte Stanley and Akiva Miola.
Hello.
Hey, I don't know what sequence of events that you guys say hello now. We're still figuring this whole situation out. I think it'll be fine. But yeah, everybody, if you're joining us, we are just about to start a brand new series, as you probably already know. We finished up our series on Wu Zhao just about a month ago at this point, and we're going to get going into a brand new series that Akiva's been working on. We're all pretty excited, especially, well, I know, Akiva, you're excited, but Charlotte and I are very excited because we know nothing really about this person. So it'll be a true trek into the unknown, which I'm pretty stoked about. But like always, everybody, just before we get started, if you are enjoying the show and you want to give us some support, you can go to our Patreon page, patreon.com/thebiographers. And if you're feeling like you don't have a couple bucks to spare, but you want to be nice anyways, you can give us a nice review somewhere. We always appreciate that, generally speaking, on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And with that, just because I want to keep things nice and quick and short, I don't like to, we do it often where we just derail.
We got 3 people now, so if we can choose not to dawdle, we should, because now everybody's there's gonna be a lot more commentary. I have a feeling with 3.
It is true. All right, well, without further ado, then, Akiva, let's get going into our new series.
Well, all right, folks, for our 16th biography, and for my very last season as the long-term co-host of this wonderful podcast, we are once again pushing the limits of our historical time machine, going back further than ever before on this show to tell a story that takes root in the bedrock of Western literature, arts, and humanity, the Roman Empire. Spanning anywhere from 500 to 1500 years, depending on who you ask, the glory of Rome begins with bronze and rough stone and ends with iron and cut marble. I'd always wanted to cover the life story of a Roman, but as I sat down to write this final season, none of the regulars spoke to me. Mad King Nero was an interesting story, but far too cruel for me, and the battles of Hannibal Barca and Julius Caesar seemed not quite my tempo, so instead, I went for the archetype that's always spoken to me. I looked for another wizard. From Da Vinci to Tesla or even Mary Shelley, I've always been fascinated with historical figures who seem to pierce the veil of the future, pulling out inventions or ideas that are beyond their time, whether it's the motions required for flight, the first science fiction novel, or the coursing of electricity that shapes our modern lives. This next character, oddly, has the unique gift of piercing the future of the mind. As his beard grew white and his body bent with age, our next biography hunched over a candle to write a journal. Not a journal where somebody writes the comings and goings of their day, but one devoted to appreciating the gifts of knowledge that those around him gave him. Instead of discussing gossip or even politics, our next biography wrote with war-weathered hands the values he held dear, and exercises to examine one's own mind in a way that can often match the very same methods that modern psychologists use in cognitive behavioral therapy. Famously kind and predisposed to peace, our next subject lived a life of paradoxes, since he would eventually take command of armies and fight in battles as possibly the most important person in the world at his time, the Emperor of Rome. Poet, philosopher, warrior, and friend, we are, of course, covering the life of Emperor Marcus Aurelius.
Warrior, you say?
Poet.
Yeah. This guy had a lot of hats.
Okay. I mean, I know him, and I'm sure you're going to go into this plenty, but I know him about stoicism and everything. I had no idea he had any fighting prowess, though, so I'm curious.
Yeah. So, we'll get into it a little bit more as we go in, but Marcus was... the depiction that they show in Gladiator, which I'm not sure if that was on air when we were talking about it, but is sort of like this wizened old man who is very kind. And I don't think that's completely inaccurate, but he was also living in a set of circumstances that were kind of beyond his own control. And that kind of forced him to learn how to operate in the military, learn how to do these things that a peaceful person otherwise would not want to do if they could help it. Right.
Interesting.
As always, I want to give a special highlight to my primary sources for this season. The first is Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic Emperor. This biography has been an absolute pleasure to read since the author, Donald J. Robertson, is a psychotherapist, which gives his analysis of Marcus's mind state a vivid, lifelike feel. Coming in at just over 200 pages, the biography is well-sourced and cited as it is concise, with an excellent emotional storytelling to boot. Also, a special thanks to Donald for adding a timeline and a family tree at the back for reference, which was fantastic because everybody's got the same name in the Roman Empire. I also want to give another shout out to our research assistant, Alana, which I did not include here in this script. But since then, I have been able to inject all sorts of fantastic information that Alana has dug up for us. So once again, thank you so much, Alana, for all the insightful information on Stoicism, Marcus Aurelius, and a lot of his contemporary writings with his teachers. My next primary source, of course, is a book written by the source itself, the Meditations. Most interestingly, the original journal was written in Greek and never had an official title. The name Meditations is just a shorthand of the original translated English title from the 1600s. In fact, as far as we could tell, the Meditations was never even meant to be read by anyone else. As a Stoic philosopher, Marcus used his writing time to write himself challenges, list out those he was grateful for as a form of proto-mindfulness, as well as write about his musings on life, death, honor, kindness, and the natural world. Written around 170 AD, today it's cherished as one of the most important self-help books in the world and as a pillar of Stoic philosophy. It's a short read and surprisingly easy to digest considering its age, and I highly recommend everyone listen to it to kind of get the full Marcus Aurelius experience. Also, as a note, Marcus would change names multiple times over the course of his life, so while I'll mention the name changes, I'm just going to use Marcus Aurelius for simplicity's sake. That being said, let us set the scene. But yeah, Marcus went for like 4 different name changes from birth to 20, because that's how royal families work and adoption works.
I've never understood that with royalty. when somebody's like, I'm born this is my name, and then I ascend to the throne, but now you need to call me Charles. It's like, why? Like, you know, I've never understood that.
I think there's been a
like
rejection
now.
lately about that, but yeah, I don't understand it.
Well, I want to say Queen Elizabeth II was one of the first. When she ascended the throne, they were like, well, what do you want your crown name to be? And she was like, can it just be Elizabeth? And they were like, yeah. And she was like, then I'm Elizabeth. And that was the end of it, you know?
Yeah.
But I've always thought it was kind of silly. And also, Akiva, I've mentioned this movie several times throughout the different seasons that we've had, but Meditations makes me think of that movie, The Holdovers. Charlotte, have you seen The Holdovers? I
haven't.
It's really good.
Thank you. Daniel has seen too many movies. Am I right about this? I cannot keep up.
I wouldn't say it's too many. I'm just not the biggest movie person.
Well, it's a wonderful movie and you should both see it, but it's all about this kid who gets at a private school. He has to stay at the school over winter break. And Paul Giamatti is the one professor who's like designated to stay behind, and he's the history professor. And towards the end of the movie, he gives the kid a copy of Meditations, and he says, I'm paraphrasing, and he's like, in this book, you will find all of the philosophy and morality that you would find in any other holy text that includes the Quran and the Bible, but, you know, without all the God nonsense.
I know it was filmed right where I went to school, so.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. It was filmed up the road.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Reading the Meditations is actually a lot like that. That's a great description because listening to it sounds like you're listening to the Old Testament or something like that. And then you're realizing that this is just some guy's journal who happened to be a philosopher. It's really cool.
It's cool.
All right. So by 121, Rome was in its 874th year, and much had changed since Romulus and Remus, the fabled founders, laid claim to the land. The old republic had come and gone, now leaving behind a political shell of its former glory. The major conquests of old had reaped bounties for the massive empire, which now spanned from Britannia to North Africa, all the way across the Mediterranean, piercing through modern Syria and Turkey. Chariot races thundered in colosseums, gladiators clashed iron and bronze, while merchants traded freely in well-paved streets below. Only 70 or so years ago, a general named Julius Caesar declared himself dictator for life, only to be slain during the Ides of March. In the east, the Jewish people had been subdued under the new Roman state of Judea, and a new upstart religion named the Christians were considered by many Romans to be a fad amongst the superstitious. Right? Just to give you some context of how far we are from our modern time, right? Now, a few generations later, the empire experiences a time of untold peace, which historians would refer to as the Pax Romana. Resting in his mother's arms, little Marcus had no idea that he was going to become one of the, quote, 5 good emperors that upheld the peace, and he certainly never predicted that he would be one of the last good rulers of Rome. His mother, Domitia Lucilla, would give birth to Marcus's sister, Annia Cornificia Faustina, as well. Decades later, Marcus would write in his famous journal of his mother, quote, "From my mother I learned to be pious and generous, to keep myself not only from evil deeds, but even from evil thoughts, and to live with a simplicity which is far from customary among the rich." Despite the humble and kind description of Domitia Lucilla, she happened to be one of the most powerful women in Rome. Born to a wealthy Roman family, Domitia would inherit a massive brick and tile factory on the banks of the Tiber, where bricks stamped with her name would be sold by the thousands, finding their way into the market of Trajan, the Pantheon, and even the Colosseum. Marcus's mother, Domitia, was considered the center of Roman elite society. Hailing from Greek origins at a time where Hellenism was more popular, her kindness, caring, and command of the Greek language made her a huge appeal. Most notably to Marcus's father, also named Marcus Verus. Now, little is known about Marcus's biological father in comparison to Domitia. Born with the same name as both his son and his father before him, Marcus Verus was born into a wealthy senatorial family who made their fortune in the olive oil business. Very Roman. Mm-hmm. The Verus family claimed that they were heirs to Numa Pompilius, who is the second king of Rome, kind of like their King Arthur, and who was best known for his ties to the old religions of Rome.
Okay.
While the ties to old kings are still departed, Marcus's father did have real ties to the new ones. Since his aunt was the wife of Hadrian, the current emperor, it seemed natural that Marcus Sr. would ascend his current rank of praetor to become head consul, but unfortunately his career and his life would be cut short.
Hadrian is in Hadrian's Wall, Hadrian?
Yes. Hadrian is in Hadrian's Wall. The builder emperor of Rome. We'll get into him for a little bit.
Okay.
In the early 120s, for reasons unknown, Marcus Verus would pass away. Barely able to know his father, Marcus would still mention him in the Meditations, where he praises him for being both modest and manly. Manly behavior in Marcus's eyes was not being aggressive, but instead being both kind and fair. In his home altar, Marcus would pray to a man he barely knew when he was most challenged by the viciousness of the elite Roman gossip. As a result of Verus's death, the family fell into somewhat political obscurity for a brief time. Domitia, as wise as she was only in her late teens or maybe early 20s when her husband passed away. So as a result, the family fell out of the limelight for a time, this time packing up to live with Marcus's paternal grandfather, who was also named Marcus Verus. You can see how this is getting annoying.
And Verus, obviously, all I think of is Game of Thrones.
Oh, yeah. Huh. It totally didn't.
Again,
What's funny is Verus actually means honesty in Latin.
Not surprising. And it's, again, goes to show, I think, that George R. R. Martin is less of like a great imaginative writer and more so of a student of history who steals a lot and then turns it into high fantasy.
Yeah. He's like, I'm just going to throw some dragons in there and then we'll call it good.
Yep.
In the Meditations, Marcus notes that Grandpa Verus was gentle and kind, a quality which was rare in a time where crowds gathered to see men kill one another for sport. Just like Marcus's father, Grandpa Verus was a statesman, but instead of a simple praetor, he was given the title of urban prefect. Basically, he was in charge of the city of Rome on behalf of the new Emperor Hadrian. We'll talk about why here in a second. It was perhaps due to his grandfather's influence that Marcus Aurelius, a distant nephew, gained the favor of one of the most important emperors in Roman history. Known as the Builder Emperor, Publius Aelius Hadrianus followed in the footsteps of his predecessor Trajan by focusing most of his efforts on securing the borders of Rome when it was at its most massive scale. In Rome itself. Yes, Publius. Biggest dickus.
Dude, that's exactly where my mind went to, was a biggest.
Isn't there a general named Pupienus?
Alive
it's
now or in history?
Pupianus.
I'm curious, do you know if he was the builder of like the Roman gates in Germany?
I wouldn't put it past him, but I don't know specifically. Hadrian was definitely one of the largest sort of constructors in the Roman Empire, partially because, and we'll get into why, he was not super welcome and in his hometown of Rome. Him and his posse traveled around the empire and just built shit all over the place.
A question for office hours.
Yeah.
Yes. In Rome itself, he rebuilt the Pantheon and the Temple of Venus, whereas in far reaches of the empire, he put down rebellions and produced physical borders such as the famous Hadrian's Wall in Britannia, now the UK. Considered one of the, quote, 5 good rulers, despite his fall from grace, which we'll get into, Hadrian greatly improved the military might of Rome and even made moderate strides towards civilizing a brutal time, such as criminalizing the murder of enslaved workers. So now you could have slaves, you just couldn't kill them, which is, it's kind of a step.
Yeah,
right?
A small step.
We're getting there.
Hey, progress is progress.
Progress is progress. Now, as Hadrian reached the middle years of his reign, he concerned himself with preparing for the time when he must find a new, promising leader to take his place. Aside from personal connection, Hadrian would have not only loved Marcus and his family for their Hellenistic ideology, remember, Greek was very in at the time, which he was enamored with, but also Marcus Aurelius' sort of family origins of being connected to his wife was another really big pull to have him in his circle. After a nasty succession crisis at the beginning of his reign, which may have involved Hadrian assassinating many politicians, Hadrian wasn't exactly well loved by the Senate. So he often found himself traveling across the empire just in case there was something going on somewhere else besides Rome. to oversee constructions in person, but, in the short visits that he did have at home, contemporaries claimed that Marcus was raised in his lap as a young boy. In fact, when Marcus was 6 or 7, Hadrian would have given him the nickname Verissimus, a pun on Marcus's original last name, Verus. Verissimus could also be translated as the most honest, a quality that Hadrian didn't exactly love in most people. Okay. See, while Hadrian considered himself a scholar, philosopher, and a writer, the purple robes of emperorship could often blind him from criticism. To give an example, his favorite speaker was a person named Verissimus of Arelate, who was an intersex sophist, which is sort of a speaker, whose masculine build but feminine appearance drew in crowds with curiosity as they lectured on language skills. After hearing Verissimus' speeches, Hadrian would commission private lessons from them, only to be corrected on the proper use of a word when writing poetry. Hadrian, incensed at being corrected, began to argue with Verissimus on the proper definition, and very smartly, Verissimus conceded to save his own life. Now, when he did this, I didn't add this in the script. Afterwards, people were like, but you knew that was like the right way to use that word. And Verissimus was like, okay, actually, the right way to use that word is whatever definition the person who has 40 legions under their command thinks is the right way to use that word. Which Hadrian caught wind of that little quip and did not like it. And he ended up banishing his favorite teacher like the next day.
By the way, I have to add that all of this does make me think of the Wu Zhao court, right?
Yes.
Assassinations, and this person said the wrong thing, so we're going to banish them or kill them. This person, I don't want to say anything to them because they're the most powerful and they can... It's the same story, really, about this royal court thing, just in different parts of the world.
You could say it's still going on now.
It's true.
You could.
Hadrian and Wu Zhao, like when we were, listening to your season and I was writing about the sort of the Hadrian portion of the story, I was like, wow, there are some deep connections where they're both intellectuals. They both have done some things to improve Rome for the people, and they're generally well loved by the people, but also both have an ego that is so massively inflated that it is impossible to puncture in any way without serious consequences, like being scored inside of a pickle jar. Now, going back to the whole nickname Verissimus, this sort of conversation with Hadrian and his teacher sort of adds some context to Marcus's nickname. At a time where speaking up against the emperor was dangerous, the calm, childlike temperament of Marcus's honesty filled the emperor with adoration instead of rage. Hadrian would once again leave Rome when Marcus was only 6, but before he did that, as a sign of Hadrian's affection for this plain-speaking, distant relative, Marcus was to be accepted into the Roman equestrian order and the College of Salai. A rank below the Senate, the Equites, which is the equestrian order, were essentially the Knights of Rome, and being inducted at a young age basically meant that Marcus was being trained to become an officer when he grew up, controlling maybe hundreds of legionnaires. While Marcus would continue being a member of the equestrians for years, it was the rituals, incense, and dances of his second admission, the College of Salai, that he would reminisce over as an older man writing the Meditations.
Do you know what Salai means? Because I'm shooting straight to Da Vinci.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea. We
should look it up.
They were spelled the same way. I should have looked that up.
Yeah, no, I'll add a note.
I just made that connection as I was reading the script.
Yeah, as you said it, you were like the College of Salai. I was like, Salai, like Da Vinci's kid?
Yeah, Da Vinci's kid. Ooh.
Boy lover.
Not his son, his kid.
Charlotte, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, I think we both had a reaction when you said Salai.
Yeah.
Yeah. A mysterious and ancient religious order, the College of Salai was rumored to be founded by King Numa himself, the same man Marcus's father claimed they were descended from. Regarded as the leaping priests of Mars, Salai would perform religious dances and katas for their god Mars. As a form of prayer to the god of the war march, the 12 elite priests would carry the 12 bronze shields that marked their order, one of which was claimed to have fallen from the heavens during Numa's reign, intentionally shuffled amongst the fakes in order to protect it. With smoke and incense, Marcus would don the priestly spiked helms known as the apex and would continue his training as a Salai for years, looking back on it with fondness in his twilight days. Kind of cool. Just wanted to include it because it's just like he's part of a cool priestly cult with bronze shields and spiked helmets. Very sick.
Charlotte, did you immediately go to Numa Numa when he said that name?
No.
Do you not know what I'm talking about?
No.
Oh, the early internet-ism? The Numa Numa guy?
Oh, man, I don't remember it.
What?
Okay.
No.
Well, I'll have to send you guys this video. This was like E-Bombs World. Charlotte,
I mean,
come
I'm
on.
sure if I see it, I would recognize it.
Charlotte, you remember E-Bombs World, though, right?
I do, yes.
Okay. It was one of the big hits on E-Bombs World. Before viral was a thing, Akiva, it was like a viral video.
Yeah.
And all of the old
Is this
farts
like some
us
sort of
are like,
proto-YouTube for the...
Do you not know about E-Bombs World?
No.
Man, okay, it's not worth going into right now, but for everybody who's, grew up in the 2000s on the internet knows E-Bombs
I just
World.
go to like badger, like
Mushroom.
snake.
Okay, I knew that one, yeah.
That came from E-Bombs World. All of the G.I.
Oh.
Joe public service announcements that were dubbed over, have you seen those ones?
Oh,
Yes.
yes, that one's
That
also
all
good.
came from E-Bombs World. So anyways, we can move on. This is stupid.
Okay, yeah. Your Honor, relevancy. In the years before Hadrian's return to Rome, Domitian hoped to provide Marcus with what he needed in order to grow from a boy to a man. As Marcus grew older, he would have had access to a slew of private tutors, orators, sophists, and philosophers. But interestingly enough, when he reflects on his early life, a huge portion of his journals are written in honor of a servant with no name. In the Meditations, when Marcus lists out the contributions of his most cherished friends in life, the teachings of this male tutor and nanny, known as a Trophius, was mentioned even above the massive scholars of the time who knew him personally. While we still don't know his identity, his input was apparently invaluable. Marcus writes of his Trophius, quote, "My tutor taught me not to favor either green or blue at the chariot races, nor in the contests of gladiators, to be a supporter of either the great shields or the small shields, which were both teams in each respective sport. He taught me to endure labor, not to need many things, to serve myself without troubling others, not to intermeddle in the affairs of others, and not to easily listen to slanders against them." Just as a note, Donald Robertson talks about this specific quote in his book, and he says sort of an insightful thing, which is all of these lessons, not to intermeddle into the affair of others, not to listen to slanders, not to gamble, those are important lessons to learn as a servant, right? So like the relevancy of these lessons translates interestingly between somebody who was a servant or perhaps a slave to somebody who was going to be destined to be the emperor of Rome. But there's still relevancy in both ways. One is I don't want to get in trouble. And then the other one is I don't want to get myself into trouble,
Don't paint a target on your back.
Yes, exactly. Right. Now, as simple as these lessons may be, it's important to remember his status in the world around him. For a wealthy young Roman with all the resources in the world, gambling, relying on others, and participating in drama and speculation was the rule, not the exception. To learn the lessons of an enslaved servant, pinching pennies, working hard, being content with little, and minding your own business was more valuable than Marcus would know in the coming years. As soon as Marcus was past the age of needing a minder, his mother, Domitian, spared no expense in his education. But once again, Marcus's meditations show that his most valuable lessons were given from unusual sources, since it was his Greek painting teacher, Diognetus, that opened his mind to the world of philosophy. Funny enough, there are no records of Marcus's work as a painter, since Diognetus took it upon himself to teach his students the ways of the mind more than the brush.
Interesting.
In the Meditations, In the Meditations, Diognetus is credited for teaching Marcus what we might consider common sense advice. Quote, "I had the lesson not to busy myself about vain things, not to credit the professions of such who pretend to work wonders, such as sorcerers and their expelling of demons." Robertson also makes an interesting quote, which is, this expelling of demons was most likely referring to early Christians, which I think is funny because now we're 2,000 years in the future and somebody who might worship the Roman gods would be considered superstitious and expelling demons and that sort of thing.
Totally.
Right?
That is interesting.
Most importantly, Diognetus encouraged young Marcus to keep his head out of trifling arguments and people, encouraging to, quote, suffer the freedom of speech in others. As Marcus writes in his journal decades later, it was Diognetus who encouraged him to jump into philosophy with both feet, reading him excerpts of famous thinkers. It was more than likely that it was he who took him to see none other than Apollonius of Chalcedon, one of Rome's most famous Stoic philosophers. Unfortunately, influencers and modern broicist creators have truly misrepresented the actual ideals of Stoicism, and it's not entirely their fault. The modern idea of Stoicism as a means of ignoring one's own feelings and becoming unmoved by life's challenges and joys couldn't be farther from the truth of ancient Stoicism. Founded by Zeno of Citium, a Semitic man from Cyprus, Zeno built the foundations of his philosophy from his criticisms of another philosophy, the Epicureans, disagreeing that moral good could be found through pleasure. Since he was not an Athenian citizen, Zeno was forced to give his lectures in the covered city streets of Athens, otherwise known as stoas, which is where the name Stoicism comes from. Just funny, because it would be like mall person. Like in English.
So
but,
are you saying though that Stoicism was technically founded and invented by a Jewish person?
I'm not saying that it wasn't, but I am saying democracy, communism, Stoicism, Marxism, we're people with ideas,
Was democracy Jewish? I thought that was Greek.
No, it's Jewish.
You sure about that?
Sure.
It's like, I'm 99% sure.
I just added that one just because I'm just going to shoot for it.
I feel like the office hours list is just growing and growing and growing.
I always was told that the Greeks invented democracy. So I want to know.
Was it a Greek who told you?
No, it was my history teachers that told me.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was my elementary school teacher.
Come on.
Okay.
All right. No. That's not actually accurate.
I'm sorry,
at least I don't know.
I didn't realize the Jewish people invented everything.
It all comes from the Jew. Okay. Where was I? Athenian citizen Zeno. Stoicism posited that the universe operated according to the reason of nature. And as a result, humans should take efforts to work within their best nature, while also not judging the world around them so long as it acts in accordance to that nature. To a Stoic, a lion hunting is within the natural order, just as a man caring for his family is an example of humanity working within nature. And Stoics would even go so far as to believe a politician lying is in accordance with nature, and one needs to be aware of those dangers as one would be aware of the dangers of a bee's sting. The 4 pillars of Stoicism, wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, were meant to be the values held by all Stoics. I really liked this one. A politician lying is in accordance with nature, and you should avoid it, not because it's just evil and the world is fraught with evil, but you just in the same way that you should avoid walking into a hornet's nest, right? There are some things that happen because it's in accordance with other people's nature. It is up to us to try to find our best nature within ourselves, but also good and bad doesn't just happen because good people do good stuff and then they get good stuff, and bad people do bad stuff so then they deserve bad stuff. It just kind of happens to everybody at random, and it is according to nature, and you just have to find some peace within it. It's kind of Buddhist in that way. Really like that.
Yeah, it's cool.
Listening to Apollonius of Chalcedon, Marcus would have learned that, according to the Stoics, one should learn to take command of one's thoughts and actions to live in accordance with nature, which meant avoiding the following of strong animalistic emotions like lust, anger, and panic to strip you of your humanity. That being said, the Stoics believed that practicing the feelings that made you human, generosity, grief, and most especially natural affection, sometimes translated as familial love, were feelings to be enhanced, not repressed. The word for natural affection is philostorgia, and there's not a direct translation, but it's sort of that feeling that you have, and natural affection is a good way to say it, that feeling that you have when you're amongst friends or family or people who are your kin, this feeling of, there's not necessarily something in it for me, but I just naturally feel drawn towards doing good and being good with this person.
The
right?
warm fuzzies.
Yes, exactly. The warm fuzzies, right? Which is funny because, Stoicism and the warm fuzzies seem like they should be polar opposites. But in fact, that's what you're supposed to be encouraging. It's just the emotions that take control of you, like grief and lust and anger, those feelings that feel righteousness, or you feel like you have control or want to take control over a situation. Those are the ones that you sort of need to tame, and maybe not repress, but tame, right? So this is, Marcus is around 12 or so at this point, and his first dip into Stoic life came with just utter fascination, and he was devoted to it almost immediately. And in his journals, he wrote that through his mentors, he took a liking to the Greek training. My primary source here made a special note that the word Marcus used for training in its original text is meant to be used in the context of a soldier. And there's actually a good reason for that. See, the Stoics, who have ties to the penniless, monk-like philosophers known as the Cynics, often adopted a regiment that tried to strip one of comforts to see how far your natural affection for people can go, even when you're unsettled. So, starting as a young teen, Marcus Aurelius would begin to sleep on a single animal skin on the floor and don the philosopher's robes. And the philosopher's robes are not as cool as the ones in Harry Potter, but no, that's the philosopher's stone. And then they have the other, what's the name of the robes? The ones that turn you invisible. Is it just the cloak?
Invisibility cloak?
Oh.
Yeah. And then they just wear their robes.
And then I'm putting it all together into one thing. Shouldn't do that.
They're definitely separate because the invisibility cloak is a very rare item.
It's true. Technically one of a kind, isn't it?
Yeah,
there's like shitty ones, and that was because she didn't think ahead, J.K. Rowling, and she was like, "Oh, there are other invisibility cloaks that are just not as good." Even though Mad Eye Moody used one to great effect, but we're not going to talk about that because
I always thought that was kind of a weird special item to have in a world where you could just like summon dragons. Is just a thing that makes you not visible. I feel like that's a pretty easy spell. That should be like a grade 1 or grade 2 sort of spell you're learning at Hogwarts.
Totally agree.
Anyway, philosopher's robes.
Granted you immortality, and then sorry, couldn't help it.
Oh no, these ones actually suck really bad. And it's kind of intentional. They're made out of the coarsest gray wool one can find, and the philosopher's robes were often worn on bare skin to further irritate the user, not only humbling them if they're rich, but also pushing the limit of their kindness. Basically, this technique was, I'm going to put you in a position where most people are going to be pissed off. And we're going to see how nice you actually are when you're in that position. Because not only will it give you some perspective for people who live their life like this, but also it's sort of a regiment for training natural affection and promoting this sensation that I think all of us can agree it's a little bit easier to focus on negatives than it is on positives, right? So like trying to promote positive thinking in a negative situation was sort of part of his Greek training, right?
I mean, I hear you. I just have always thought it was so silly when religious zealots of any kind, or like the easy one is the self-flagellation stuff in Christianity, where it's like, I'm going to whip myself in penance for my sins and stuff. Like, come on, guys, like relax, For sure. Or I recently heard about a guy in India who has refused to sit down for the past like 20 years because of a god that he worships, and it's in tribute to it. And his legs are literally like shriveling apart, and his toes are curled. And I'm like, what? Stop it. Just come on.
Yeah.
Wear a comfy robe. Take a seat for a little while. Like, this isn't, I don't know.
Yeah. I would say that there is a good dose of like unhealthy self-restriction that comes with ancient Stoicism. But what I do like about this is it's not necessarily a form of self-punishment because you are inherently sinful and you need to be punished for that, or necessarily a form of hurting myself for devotion over a god. It's more of strengthening the muscle that is kindness through being in a position that would normally naturally frustrate you.
Sure.
Right. So like it does have some tie-ins, and definitely I think Stoicism in a big way influenced later Christianity in those ways. But there is like that slight difference of like, this is almost like a, you know, a Shaolin monk training, you know, in order to elevate their body as opposed to as a form of self-punishment because they feel they deserve it or they feel the gods won't like them if they do, you know?
It reminds me of like ice plunges.
A little bit, yeah.
Right, people like you're forcing yourself to be uncomfortable to kind of like overcome, I don't know.
Yes,
something.
The natural reactions in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody jumps into cold water and their first thing is, holy shit, I need to get out of this immediately. Versus like saying, calm down, I'm in control here.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And like taking over with those more subtle, less powerful cognitive abilities that humans, unlike most other animals, I think, possess. Right. So Marcus's training was so vigorous, in fact, that Domitia, his mother, began to worry for her son, begging him to sleep on at least a bed of straw so that he wouldn't wake every morning all bruised and battered. Remember, this is a rich kid, so him doing this is kind of making a scene.
I'm sorry, what's he sleeping on?
He was sleeping on one animal skin on a stone floor, and now he's sleeping on a bed of hay under that animal skin.
Gotcha.
Right? Because she's just like, come on, you get out. Like, you know, I can imagine some Italian mother being like, why are you sleeping on the floor like that? You know?
Why do you go sleep on the floor? Put the hay.
I bought you
Mama,
a nice
I'm trying
bed.
to do something. Get out of here. As Marcus prepared to don the toga virilis, making him a legal adult at 15, according to Rome's law, he had transformed from a naive, honest boy to a young man who didn't simply study philosophy because it was expected, but because the values of Stoicism sat deeply in his heart. With his rough-hewn cloak, a temperate young Marcus would be pushed to his limits. When the Emperor Hadrian returned to Rome, this time with bloody hands, weeping eyes, and a broken mind. See, while young Marcus was playing Socrates at home, Hadrian had taken yet another tour of his empire. At the time, the area surrounding modern Israel and Palestine, which stretched from the Mediterranean across Jerusalem and to the Dead Sea, had been conquered some 200 years prior when Vespasian had uprooted the Jewish Hasmonean dynasty. But much to Hadrian's dissatisfaction, the pesky locals were still upset with being part of the Roman Empire after all this time. The Jewish-Roman wars would come in 3 waves between these 200 years, culminating in the Bar Kokhba revolts during Hadrian's rule. Around 130 AD, Emperor Hadrian planned to rebuild Jerusalem as Aelia Capitolina, a Roman colony dedicated to Jupiter, which sent the Jewish people into despair since the chance to rebuild their temple was no more. Soon, one of Hadrian's commanders, Gessius Florus, would loot the Israeli temple treasury, scrapping and melting down precious artifacts. Despair turned to revolt under the Jewish leader, Simon Bar Kokhba, who, despite the odds, was able to repel Roman forces and reestablish a Jewish state. While they were able to sustain a kingdom for a short time, Hadrian would appoint a new general, Sextus Severus, who would, with an unusually large force, even by Roman standards, lay waste to every remaining rebel in the region. The results were devastating to the Jewish forces, and under Hadrian's order, all Jewish religious practices were banned under threat of death. According to ancient sources, hundreds of thousands have died, including Jewish religious scholars such as my own namesake, Rabbi Akiva, in an effort to keep their religion and their homes. So interesting to just run into my own personal history about my name, because I didn't really know anything about Rabbi Akiva. I'm going to be real. I probably should have looked it up at some point. I don't know why, but the curiosity has never been there for me.
Yeah, and by the way, you've said before that you think that you don't have a cool name. I wholeheartely disagree. I think Akiva is a cool...
It is a cool name.
I like it now, but when I was a kid, I was like, I want to be named Josh.
Yeah, you know. Also, what was the name you said earlier? It was Gessius Lucius or something like that?
There's a couple of them. Gessius Florus.
That's a cool last name.
It's funny because it sounds like somebody's making up names and trying to make them sound Roman, right? It's
yes,
his name is Jesse Florin, and they're like, we're gonna call you Gessius. It's like me being like, no, now Charlotte, you are Charlotus Stanlius.
That sounds good to me.
Akivius Meolius.
Meolius. That's a little. We're pushing the packet on that one. But Davidicus, right? Davidicus.
That's David.
Yeah. There we go. I would be a good David, and then you would be what?
Either
call
or
you?
Danius or Danonius.
Yeah. Yes.
I like Danonius.
Danonius Numanius. I'll take that.
Okay. All right.
So stupid.
Where were we? Oh, yeah. Death and despair. As for the survivors, Roman Judea would experience one of the biggest depopulation campaigns in history until almost no Jews remained in the region at all. This would be the beginning of the diaspora, the mass movement and enslavement of Jews that brought families such as mine as far as Eastern Europe and Spain. After the mass removal, Rome renamed the province of Judea to Syria Palestina, and after the rebels were dealt with, Hadrian continued his tour of the empire, picking up a new plaything along the way. To backtrack a bit, Hadrian, while touring the Roman-controlled lands in modern Turkey, would grow to be fascinated by a local boy named Antinous. Around the same time, he gave Marcus the nickname Verissimus. It's likely that Marcus and Antinous knew one another, since both were favorites of the emperor, but as Hadrian returned to the palace, Marcus Aurelius would realize that they were both appreciated for vastly different reasons.
Oh, no.
In the case of Hadrian and Antinous, the two had formed a relationship known as paiderastia, which centers around an older man's affection for a younger boy. While this has often presented itself in somewhat harmless forms of mentorship, Hadrian wanted a little bit more out of Antinous than to be his teacher. Sexual relations between older mentors and young boys were not uncommon, and some even considered it appropriate so long as the younger boy was not a freed Roman citizen. Which is crazy because they're like, oh, dude, you can't just be doing it with boys unless they're enslaved boys from other countries. Then that makes it better.
Obviously. I mean, come on. This is 101.
Ethics 101.
No, I genuinely wonder how these like logical conclusions were come to, right? Where they were like,
he's not a real person.
Right. Is it a boy from Rome? How dare you? But if it's a boy from somewhere else, sounds good to me, buddy. Like,
yeah.
It's so strange, these like
decision
rules.
makings, right? Now, that being said, it didn't mean that it was uncontroversial. In fact, as Hadrian's affection for Antinous grew, so did the Senate's disgust. Hadrian, according to ancient sources, fell further and further for his paramour, writing lewd poetry about him, even as Antinous's beard began to fill in, marking the relationship as entirely inappropriate, since for some reason it was okay to assault young boys in Roman society, but not adult men.
Cool.
Love that.
Because they're like, dude, Antinous, when he was a boy slave from another country, everybody didn't mind. But he's an adult Roman man who can now consent logically. That's disgusting. Okay.
Jeez.
In the late summer of 130 AD, the same year Hadrian planned his big overhaul of the Levant, the emperor would be found kneeling at the banks of the Nile River, quote, weeping like a woman, over the body of his young lover as his waterlogged corpse was dragged to the shore.
Uh-oh.
The death of the emperor's famous lover remains one of the great mysteries of Rome, since there are as many stories explaining his death as there are people who witnessed it. Whether it was the Senate removing a political problem, a young man choosing death over captivity, or a late-night swim gone sour, the death of Antinous marked the beginning of the end of the builder king of Rome. So Hadrian lost his twink, and now he's very sad.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's hilarious, though, if there's any question about, like, was this young lover that everybody hated and thought was controversial killed by one of these other people's assassins in a time where political assassination was totally common? Well, we just don't know. It's like, yeah, we fucking do. Like, he was taken out. Like, come on.
He was not swimming in the Nile.
No.
You're swimming in denial.
Hey-o.
Okay. Following Antinous' death, Hadrian ordered dozens of temples to be built around the world, and he instilled a new religion, the cult of Antinous. While the public supported him as always, those who lived on the hills of Rome saw a ruler crumbling. Hadrian, now sick and gray, became more vicious and mercurial since he returned to the capital. He was far too aware of what politicians thought of him, and fear of assassination began to plague his every decision. the aged emperor moved away from central Rome to a complex in Tivoli about 20 miles away. Spanning 300 acres across with 30 different buildings, Hadrian surrounded himself with hundreds of enslaved servants and even built a fortress inside his palace, surrounded by a moat, for when he felt the need to isolate himself from his perceived enemies. So he's like, I'm building a castle in my castle.
He's very paranoid.
Yes. His paranoia, however, couldn't be contained to his palace alone. Soon, Hadrian would deploy hundreds of both citizen and military spies known as delatores or frumentari to infiltrate the homes of both his enemies and especially his friends. Soon, dozens of senators, soldiers, and even close friends were carted off, banished, or even executed for speaking ill of the Mad King. A contemporary writes, quote, "In this way also the incautious are caught by soldiers at Rome. A soldier sits by you in common dress and begins to speak ill of the emperor, and then you, as if you have received a pledge of his fidelity by his having begun the abuse, utter yourself what you think, and then you are carried in chains." Hadrian began to obsess about his own death, his superstitions growing. Any surprising event that could be seen as an omen from the fates, whether it was a madman running into the Senate building or his royal signet ring slipping off his withered finger, was a sign of his demise. It was time for him to find a successor. Initially, Hadrian's first pick was a man named Caionius Commodus. Already struggling with sickness and generally disliked, Caionius was not in favor with the Senate, but nonetheless Hadrian dubbed him Caesar, which was the new term for emperor-to-be after Julius did his whole thing. Likely terrified, Marcus would find himself a part of the succession crisis Hadrian had created, since as a condition of Caionius's emperorship, Marcus was arranged to marry his daughter Saonia. The favor of the emperor became more and more of a curse. So Marcus was just minding his own business, sort of like a distant relative on, Hadrian's wife's side. And then all of a sudden, because, Hadrian liked him, he's like, oh, I remember that kid, the one who was like talking shit to me. He had a good mouth on him. He was smart. We're going to make him next in line, and you're going to end up marrying Caionius's kid. And then Caionius was like sick and dying, but for some reason he was chosen as the next guy to be emperor. Okay. And now Marcus is like, oh shit, not only am I next in line, but I'm next in line for a guy that nobody likes who's probably going to die of some illness tomorrow.
And I have to marry his daughter.
Yes, and I have to marry his daughter, and I don't even know who she is, and I'm like 12.
Who's only 12 at this point?
15, give or take. Right.
Still,
the timing is really weird with this part of Roman history because it's really weird with Marcus. We have tons of information on what his personal thoughts about life are, but like the timeline is hazy.
Gotcha.
Right.
Okay. So he's like basically going, I'm technically in line, but I'm also like basically my time is very closely arriving because the guy in front of me is about to croak.
Not only that, but he's also hated. So there's a chance that I'll just get killed and they will pick a new Caesar.
Jeez.
Marcus's fate, however, would luckily very shortly take a major turn when his new father-in-law was found dead from an overdose of medicine from his sickness. So kind of crisis averted. Following the death of the new Caesar, the walls of the empire began to shake. Senators panicked that the transfer of power could plunge Rome into darkness, so in one last sensible order by Hadrian, he elected a man named Antoninus Pius as his new successor. Antoninus Pius, as we'll see in the next episode, would become one of the 5 good emperors of the Pax Romana, the time of peace, proving himself to be good with the coin purse and good with the people. At this time, however, Antoninus was working as a consul, and the Senate loved him. Kind, respectful, diligent, and wise, Antoninus was everything the Senate wanted that the now dead heir, Caionius, didn't have. In order to make it official, Hadrian adopted Antoninus, but only on the condition that his failed replacement sons, Lucius Verus and Marcus Aurelius, were adopted by Antoninus in turn. So, gets a new stepdad. New stepdad dies, now gets another new stepdad, but the brother from the old stepdad comes along with him, and now he has a stepbrother from the guy who died previously.
Not confusing at all.
Yeah. Lucius Verus, that was Caionius's kid. Caionius kicked the bucket from an overdose. And then Hadrian was like, okay, well, we'll just move those kids over to this guy, and then that's the problem solved. So now Lucius and Marcus are brothers. Antoninus is his new dad.
Okay.
His reign would last for 23 years, but in truth, he began ruling before he ever donned the purple. Hadrian, now nearing 60 years old, had fallen ill to both his vices and his disease, and Antoninus served as the barrier between an addled mind and a terrified Senate. As the old emperor's suspicions grew, Antoninus would step in to reduce the bloodshed, using his new legal abilities to banish and imprison Hadrian's conspirators. For instance, before Hadrian died, he ordered for dozens of senators to be summarily executed in one large show of force, but Antoninus instead held them prisoner, tactfully releasing them after Hadrian's death and pretending that his sparing was Hadrian's plan all along in an attempt to sort of preserve his predecessor's honor. Right? He was like, oh, the whole thing about Hadrian killing you, Hadrian was never going to do that. Hadrian is a very good guy and he would never do that to you.
Fake news.
That's sort of a way to like, you know, like, oh, he didn't mean it. And Hadrian's like, I mean it. Kill them. You know? Antoninus is like, shut up. Go back inside. Hadrian would receive the death he deserved on July 10th, 138 AD. According to the Historia Augusta, Hadrian would uncover a plot for his assassination led by the senator Lucius Julius Ursus Servianus. Before Servianus was killed, he asked to pray to the gods one last time, wishing that, quote, Hadrian will long for death, yet be unable to die. If the Historia is to be believed, his prayers came true. As swelling, bloody noses, and disease ravaged his body, Hadrian attempted suicide multiple times. In one instance, he marked his chest with ink and asked his enslaved huntsman to pierce his heart.
Jeez.
Terrified of what to do, the enslaved man refused, and as a result, Hadrian ordered him executed for not executing him, which Antoninus stopped from happening. You can see Antoninus's job is he's kind of like the caretaker for a elderly asshole at a retirement home, right?
Elderly asshole is, I think, a very accurate description. I order you to kill me. No, I'm sorry, master. I cannot kill you. Okay, well then I'll kill you instead. It's like, talk about a catch-22,
like,
man.
Go back inside. Did you take your meds today? Let me see under your tongue.
Jeez.
Okay. Next, he ordered his physician to overdose him, but the doctor was so afraid of becoming a kingslayer, the doctor killed himself instead. Confined and watched over for his final days, Antoninus ensured that Hadrian would die of natural causes by July 10th, 138 AD. The builder emperor of Rome, the butcher of the East, and Marcus's horrifying adopted grandfather was finally no more.
Okay.
Now, only a 17-year-old, Marcus, and his adopted brother, Lucius Verus, looked on with anxiety to see how their new father, Antoninus Pius, would behave when he sat upon the throne. An even greater horror, however, was the thought that Marcus was now in line to do so himself one day. And that is where we're going to pick up for part 2.
Like we're just getting cooking, man.
Yeah, dang.
Like, I'm like, oh, come on now. Like, let's, you know, that's always how it is, I feel like. The
right?
episodes.
Right? There's so much, it's with an emperor, there's going to be so much like pre-history before we actually get into his shit, like the story of Hadrian and how he became emperor, because this is a weird part in Roman history where predecessors were not actually chosen by birth order. They just like sort of adopted emperors.
Yeah.
I don't know what the deal was. Maybe, I think it was like a good luck thing. They just thought it was bad luck to have a biological heir.
Really?
Because you got to remember, at this time, the idea of an emperor was distinctly different culturally than a king.
Okay.
Because the emperor was supposed to be Rome's first citizen, the example of what a Roman citizen should be, right? So being kingly was actually unseemly for emperors, which is part of the reason why people hated Hadrian, because he was like dripped out, killing people left and right, doing king shit, you know? So like the idea of like an adoption situation makes a little bit more sense for what people wanted an emperor to be.
You have to work for it.
Yes,
like
a little bit. They have to like at least make a show of working for it, you know? You know, there is nepotism there, but like it's more of like a nepotism with a dose of meritocracy where it's like, yes, I'm going to pick somebody who's related to me, or I'm going to make them related to me, but I'm not just picking my oldest son because he's my oldest, because what if he's a dumbass, you know?
Like, which we saw in Wu Zhao. Like
exactly. Well, that guy had 40 years of experience at 46 years old. Wait, no, that was the other one, right?
Which in Wu Zhao?
Who was the 6-year-old consul?
That was one of her sons. But that was early on. That was that was when she became empress, and then they fled after she assassinated the concubine and the previous empress, and was afraid of their ghosts. So she was like, "Me and my husband are out of here, but 6-year-old son, you got this."
Like, okay,
left him behind, which is really funny objectively. Like, it's sad but hilarious and whatever. I don't know. It's just funny.
I mean, this is a crazy plot. Like, just to like I put a little note just for like a recap, because I know we hop between places. Marcus had gone from living without a father to living with his grandfather to getting adopted by the next Caesar, gaining a brother and a wife, to having yet another father die, to getting adopted by Antoninus Pius, the new Caesar of Rome. And then the marriage gets called off later on, and then he's now adopted to the next emperor of Rome, even though he was never in line in the first place. So like this kid who's like, I really like philosophy, I think I'm going to be a philosopher. All of the adults around him were like, how'd you like to be emperor? And he's like, I wouldn't like that at all. And they're like, well, that's too bad, because you are now.
I wonder, does the guy named Pius, I wonder if that's where the word pious comes from. Office hours.
I don't know. I think pious meant diligent in Latin, whereas it means religiously diligent in like the modern sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So like, I think it was just more of like a moniker. Maybe it was his last name, but I thought it was just like a moniker that they gave him because he was diligent.
Okay.
Like Antoninus the Diligent.
I feel like this would also be before the Roman Catholic Church really started to take over in Rome. Yes. Before they were like, oh, I'm Pope Pius, which was a thing. There was like, I think there was like 4 some odd Pope Piuses, you know, Pope Pius the 4th.
I'm Mr. Good Guy.
Yeah, I'm like literally Pope Religious, which is what I think is one of the funniest things about taking that on as a name. Like, well, yeah, you're the friggin' Pope. Shouldn't you be automatically as part of your sort of persona? But nope, they had to let everybody know in their name, trust me, I'm a very religious person.
Catherine the Great.
That's true.
Yeah. Or just like, I'm good. Like, it's so funny how that works. You're just like, yeah, my name is Akiva the Awesome Guy. So,
well, it's like, I wonder about that with William the Conqueror. You know what I mean? It's like, did he say, you can call me William the Conqueror now? Or did he conquer enough stuff that people were like, we're just going to call you William the Conqueror because you can't stop conquering? You know,
it's like, that's his thing.
Yeah.
It's like Tyler, the Creator, you know,
he can't help but create. Well, super cool first episode, man.
Thank you.
I feel like we're just getting cooking. And I know I'm realizing now, probably one of the reasons that I never think about the Roman Empire is because I know nothing about the Roman Empire apart from very small things that I remember from like middle school and high school social studies. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, you don't know what you don't know, right? Yeah. And what I found, I was a little daunted to do this one right after Wu Zhao because I was like, God, we're going to do 2 emperors in a row. But what I'm finding with this one is it's more about watching the ingredients that get put into Marcus and then seeing the decisions that he makes based off of those ingredients, right? Yeah. Like he's got a pinch of wisdom from a servant, a pinch of wisdom from a philosopher and from a painter and from all of these people. He's in the, this court where if literally you just speak up, your grandpa might just assassinate you. Like you might be in your own house thinking nobody's listening. And then all of a sudden you're like, yeah, I think Hadrian can be kind of a dick sometimes. And then all of a sudden you're at the gallows, right? Mm-hmm. So like all of these, like the thing that he said about his mother, right? Not only to not do evil, but to not even think about evil. Donald Robertson makes a great sort of connection there in his writing where it's like that's actually really a good lesson to learn when there are people who are actively trying to find some reason to convince you of being, or convince somebody that you're betraying the emperor, right? Having these like, I'm going to be in command of my actions and my thoughts so that I'm above reproach, right? Whereas like Wu Zhao was very much the Game of Thrones storytelling, raw, insane decision making that happened in ancient China. We're sort of like following the brain of this person and then seeing like what's Marcus gonna do next now that he's learned about philostorgia, now that he's learned about stoicism, all of these different ideas, right?
It's cool.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fascinating.
It's also, it strangely reminds me of Akiva. I don't know if you've experienced this, Charlotte. I feel like you probably have. In the corporate world, there are many times where somebody, like, they don't raise their hand for anything. They don't say like, hey, I want to be the manager. That's my goal one day. Nothing. And then somebody just comes to them after they just start doing their work and they just go like, hey, I want to make you the global leader of blah, 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 blah. And they're like, oh, really? Why? And they're like, because I just like you. You got good attitude. You just, there's something about you that just, you should be one of the leaders. And the person's like, okay, fine. And then there are other people who shall name nameless that are like, dude, I want to do this. And people are like, yeah, wait your turn.
Yeah. Well, it's also like sometimes those guys who didn't want to be manager, who end up being manager, are some of the best managers. Yeah. Right. Because they were like, they're not like, oh, I can't wait until I get to be in control of other people's lives for 8 hours a day. They're just like, man, I'm really good at writing this code. And now they want me to do something else. And I guess I'll just help these other guys write code while I manage them, and like that's a much healthier perspective. And I think Marcus is sort of like, he's not a perfect person, but I think he's also a smart enough person to know that he's not a perfect person. Whereas Hadrian is more of an example of like your classic ruler of like, I wanted this, I killed people for this, I have this, and now I'm being tortured by this. Mm-hmm. Whereas Marcus, like from a young boy, got to watch. It's sort of like if you like have friends who are like the youngest in a very messy family, and they just like tend to be the most level-headed out of the group because they got to watch all the crazy shit their siblings did or the crazy shit their aunts and uncles did. I feel like Marcus kind of had some of that good life experience, wise beyond his years for that reason.
Totally. Well, cool, man. I'm stoked and I'm looking forward to the next episode. I guess we'll wrap things up there, everybody. But like always, we appreciate you listening and taking the time out to learn about something maybe you didn't know a whole lot about, like me and Charlotte, and that Akiva's done all the homework for us. But yeah, thanks everybody for listening. Just like we said at the beginning of the episode, if you are enjoying the show and you want to give us a little bit of support, you can do so by going to our Patreon page, patreon.com/thebiographers. If you have any questions, comments, corrections, things for us to add into office hours, you can send us an email at thebiographerspodcast@gmail.com. And then also, if you have a spare second and you want to give us a kind review somewhere, we'd appreciate that as well. Helps with our numbers and all that good stuff. And then, like always, before we wrap things up, Akiva, what do we got going on in the sphere of metalworking?
Yes. So if you have listened to our office hours, as you know, some things are changing. We're not just adding a third person to the chat for fun and laughs. I'm going to be going full-time working at Hadrian Fuller here in Denver. So if you are interested in knife making and you want to get to meet me, talk about history with me during lunch hours or whatever, come to Hadrian Fuller, learn how to make a knife with me. We have tons of classes on the website. I know we have a couple of open slots for this month and maybe 2 more classes that are still looking to get filled up for September. So please check out Hadrian Fuller. That's where I'm going to be teaching. And if you just want to buy a knife, you're not in Colorado, you want to have a nice handmade good, check out Metalwork by Miola. And if you use the code biographers at checkout, that's going to get you 10% off.
Perfect. Thanks, Akiva. Yeah, for everybody, again, reiterate, metalworkbymiola.com, biographers at checkout, 10% off your order. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We appreciate you. And do remember, like always, ignorance is not stupidity. It is the absence of knowledge. And I do hope you all learned something today.
See ya.
Bye.
You've been listening to The Biographers. For more information, please visit thebiographerspodcast.com.